Hi, everyone. Judy and I wanted to kind of talk about, we've had a lot of, questions from both like the business community, other practitioners about what is happening in Colorado with the SUTS system. I've had a fellow colleague in Illinois reach out and be like, hey, I've got questions. We've talked to the Denver Business Journal because they're hearing things from their constituencies or, from their businesses to try to figure it out. And so Judy and I, have, Judy's been involved since the very beginning, right? With, the simplification task force and just like being instrumental in like, hey, if we want to do this, we need one system. And now it's in development, it's almost in rollout, but it's still a giant like WTF. Like, and so it's still, we wanted to share just kind of what's out there, what we know as of today, the day of recording, because this is an evolution, right?
Right.
And so I think, yeah, I think to start, we have this process that we know is happening, right? Localities or the home rule jurisdictions, right, can now get on board with Wayfair. Colorado's has been there. And now because of SUTS, the streamline or the
Sales and use
simplification
tax system.
there it is.
That's just, yeah.
So that's a thing now. State like jurisdictions are on board. I think we have all but maybe like 6 or 7 right now.
I think they're all on board. All of them are playing ball. It's the administration that's the challenge. First, you have the issue of the council or the governing body at the city level, typically a city council, has to agree. So that has to go to a vote of the board. And then you have to add law into your ordinances, which also is a process to say, we're going to do this. And then on the back end, you got to do all this IT stuff to say, hey, I had this website or I had a mailing system. Here's my license and here's my forms. And you set everything to my website and I took the money for my license in the city of Aspen. But now I'm going to take it here on my old system, online, via paper, whatever they did. And then they got to go to the state too. So they got 2 bodies of information coming together for a taxpayer. And as you can appreciate, like they know all their taxpayers that are licensed and registered and they've got the roll and they're like, oh, that's so-and-so and that's their number. And now that number is going to show up in a different system with different money. So how do they make sure they account for all that and get the money and the true up and all that? Because you don't want to see a transition to the Colorado online system, SUTS, for Aspen, and then have a bunch of notices going out to your taxpayers saying, where's your filing? Where's your filing? Where's your filing? Because it didn't go through their normal process. So that alone, from the IT perspective, is sort of this magic that's happening behind the scenes. And as you can appreciate, the cities have lockdowns, they have proprietary information. They have to protect it. The state has information. How do they two talk? They're not brother and sister, they're not family, separate legal entities, separate governmental bodies. And so that's the biggest challenge, is that back part to make sure, yeah, no problem, we can add you, Aspen. How does Aspen account for it?
Right.
So that's why the hindrance has been, it's been like, yep, we're ready to play ball. Our city council has agreed. We've changed our ordinance to say we're going to allow it. And we're going to have the standard that says if you have Wayfair Nexus in Colorado, you have Wayfair Nexus in the city of Aspen, which is a big change. That's not the same Nexus standard that Aspen would have. Would typically be related to a physical presence. I have a location, I visit, whatever. Now I'm just going to say Nexus in Colorado, Nexus in Aspen, right? So I have to do that. Then I have to make sure the transactions work. And then I want to make sure I get my money. And right. So that's where the hindrances lied, because some of these cities are not large. Denver, has been playing ball since the beginning, and they had challenges because they have a whole Gentax system. That's the software they use to deal with their return, provide, all their integration around Gentax is how they get the money in, the money out. They reconcile to their ledgers of their taxpayers, make sure they account for everything so that they know everything's in line, make sure they don't send notices to people in error. And now we're going to look at this other thing that's not Gentax. That's tough. And Denver has a huge amount of IT people. They're a huge governmental body. They're not as big as the state, but they're a heck of a lot bigger than Aspen's
right
employees. And the people who work for the city of Aspen are not all IT. They're not all in finance. They're not all in sales tax. So you got a lot of people that might work for the city, but they're not capable of helping get the system work. So there's just a lot of logistics that's been really interesting see the back of it, right? But we put it
Right.
out there like, get in, get in, get in. Well, you get in and you're like, I can only add 14 cities. Where's the other 60 or 56? There's 71 total. Where are they? They're not in yet.
Well, right. And much to the credit of, Muni Revs who's developed the system and went from like nothing to like
Uh-huh.
this behemoth, like there's still just so much confusion when we're in, right? Like, how do I, you know, how do I get you your money? Like, how do I know that I can do this? Like, how do I trust that I didn't miskey something and now I'm getting notices? Who am I getting a notice from? Is it
That's right.
Denver?
That's
Because I
right.
put a 7 instead of a 4 in like the allocation account column.
Yep.
But you can also do your upload spreadsheet that covers, I think it's important to call out that it does cover, Colorado sales tax. It covers the Colorado statutory. So you can still file your Colorado return through
Yep.
SUTS and it will be accepted.
Yep.
But then also including Denver, Boulder, Aspen, Loveland, whatnot. But if you don't have an account in Denver, Boulder, Aspen, Loveland, you can still give them the tax. And then I think someone in theory is going to reach out to you as,
Get you an
a
account.
remitter to
Yep.
get an account. But who does that? Is it Colorado? Is it Aspen who gets this list? And then if all of the businesses around the country who sell into Colorado are, supposed to be doing this, how are they going to handle that intake? Right? And it goes back to like the size of governments and even Denver, like, because they still are the same people who are going in and running, you know, use tax audits on like their in city
That's
taxpayers.
right.
So it's just like there's still we are learning and trying to figure it out. I think
And
the
they're
cities
learning and
and
trying to
they're
figure it out.
learning. And I
Yes.
think, we've been asked, we have the benefit of being, again, you as the inside source, right, of being on the task force, but also like as a Denver, or, as a Colorado based advisory firm, like we have some, fundamental knowledge of
Yeah.
what goes on in our state. There's still just so much ambiguity, right? Because it's like we can do it, but when do we have to do it? What happens? Are we going to get in
Correct.
trouble if we don't do it?
Yep.
When are we going to get in trouble if we don't do
Yeah.
it? Because it's hard. It's a massive shift for everyone. And even, going back to the destination sourcing for the state collected taxes, like it
Right.
was a huge, like,
Yeah, and it was a 6 month delay. So they enacted
yeah,
in November. They didn't enforce till June of the following year. And even that they couldn't handle. I remember the beginning, the state said, please don't turn on any more cities than what you might remit in. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. My clients have software. They can activate every jurisdiction. They're not going to pick and piece. They sell wherever. They're going to collect the tax at destination like you told them to. You better let them open it up so that they can put that money in those buckets. But remember, the state in the beginning said, just pick the buckets you want.
right,
Are you kidding me? Just give me an all or nothing. Well, you know what happened there? That became a registration at a license level at the local cities. Remember that? And the cities would say, hey, we see you sold to Gunnison County. Why don't you have a local registration in this town? Because I just opened it up everywhere because it was easier to check one box than to check 15 or 70 or whatever. I didn't want to go through and have to look at that minutia. I have the ability to collect and remit everywhere because I have software that does that for me. And so I'm happy to do so. You just need to open up the bucket so I can give the right money to the right place.
right.
And the state couldn't deal with that. So, it did get better. I think we don't really have those issues that I've heard of in the last year at least. So we've definitely figured that out. But the state was struggling with the destination reporting, right? So imagine that at the local level where they don't control the cities, but everybody's going to work together and give everybody a little grace, I think. The cities are going to be super psyched that you've gotten involved and then you tried to activate, that you're giving them their money. The abundance will be amazing. Your customers aren't going to care because they owed the money anyway. And you just made it easier for them to make sure they get it to the city. Instead of just working on the state's remittances. So it's a blessing all the way around. But the administration is a challenge. So we've been telling people, say you already had like 20 city licenses because you're already licensed in Fort Collins and Denver and Aspen, Boulder, and so on and so forth. We're saying hold tight, just keep remitting separately. I know it's a little bit more of a hassle. It'd be nice to streamline it. Just wait though, so we can add all those licenses into SUTS and add all the new ones that you don't already have nexus in, but you will through Wayfair. The Wayfair economic nexus at that city level will be basically, because you have it at the state, you have it at the city, just turn them on then, because then you're not really late to the party, and then you can get you'll get those licenses accordingly. Now, we may not have 100%. We're hoping on July 1 to be that target date.
Right.
We're hoping by July 1, we're going to be able to go live everywhere and just activate. That's our goal. That's our hope. That's what we keep getting told. But there's still probably just going to be some logistics, because I mean, some of these cities have like 10 people that work there. I mean, they just don't have the bandwidth
for the city, not just the finance department,
right?
The city.
Yeah. Or like, yeah, right. So, I mean, we do have some very small home rule cities. They just don't have the ability, the bandwidth. You know, I'm going to give an example. Remember this years ago when we did destination reporting at the state level, they asked for 10 full-time equivalents to process all the new Wayfair licenses at the state, and the legislator gets to approve those budget expenses, and they didn't approve it, so they had to deal with it with the people they had. Well, that's just adding even more to their job than they have. And you know, you can like government or not, but I do believe the most people we've dealt with try to work really hard, but physically you can only do so much. Like at some point you're exhausted and you're done, and there's a lot of minutia.
Like as a governmental employee, you don't have overtime, you have furlough days, especially with what happened with like you know, COVID. It's like you're not allowed to work today.
Paid a premium. You know, my state worked for the Attorney General's office, the biggest law firm in the state of Colorado, and he had to pay for his CPE or CLE and his license, and he had to pay to move his desk because they didn't have the resources for that. I think the one free thing we joked years ago was he got a planner. That was free. He got a planner. Now we use iPhones, but they didn't pay for that either. So, I mean, you know, they try to do the best they can with limited resources, and people do work for governments because they do care about the public. Maybe eventually they become like, we try to do a great job for people. Our cities certainly do take really good care of their taxpayers, and they're very approachable, and they know their businesses in their cities as opposed to the state being larger. But those are some of the things I think we're really struggling with as to the when. And then I think we should talk quickly about maybe the logistics of it, right? So now what we went in, we tried to do this ourselves, like set up a fake account with one of our clients and see what it took to add it. And there were some interesting idiosyncrasies there about how we added the cities and so forth. It was almost like a spreadsheet adoption. Like, what would you say, Meredith, you thought when you saw that?
Well, because how you add a license, like if you're going to add a license, there is no check at that point. So, we used a client's Denver sales tax license just as like an example, right? Not thinking that there was like a save option or you could delete it. We put it in and all of a sudden it was like TaxOps Salt, Denver license. And we're like, wait a minute, that's not our license. We couldn't we just get rid of it. I think we didn't somehow it's not there now. So, client who will know, but like
reached out to us and said, hey,
that's because
do this. And we're like, yeah, we were, but we weren't really, we're just playing around with the system, and they were gracious enough to delete it. But I do think there's a little bit of those challenges. Like, you need all your account numbers. That would be one thing. So if you do already have local city licenses, if you're going to go to SUTS and you're going to do it yourself without assistance, you're going to need all those licenses, because those get keyed in. They may or may not get verified at the time of key, which means errors will make a difference. You could miskey something, fat finger it, and so that will be a challenge for you. There'll be some reconciliation expected. It is what it is. They are hoping to have like immediate validation. So there is the goal. A part of that is they upload all the city licenses that the cities are keeping, and then that will be in SUTS. So they'll be able to go, yep, we know you have a Denver license. Yep, we know you have an Aspen license. But that may not be for every city, just so you know. So you have to have that list. And then if you want to add new jurisdictions, you kind of just activate them, and then they'll prompt back from the city. It's their system creating the license, and they'll cross-pollinate to give that license back to you, and then you'll have it for the next filing. Maybe not the next one, maybe the next one after that. So then you're sending it in under like this concept called applied for, because sometimes you just don't get the numbers immediately.
Right. Well, and I think that's the perfect transition. It's like, hey, this is an evolution. We are staying up to date as best as we can. We have, our sources of information that are kind of like a mini bat phone for sales tax. So you can reach out to us, and you can follow us on saltovation.com. And Judy and I will probably continue this conversation because it's an evolution. So thanks for joining us today.